Hello and welcome to another special episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today we have got three of my favourite guests from previous shows all together. I say that to everyone about that, but we're collected from around the globe today. Travis, Oliver, and Brian, how are you all?
Hey, great to see you,
Toby. Doing well,
Very
sir.
good.
Good to have you all on again. Three people who I know each other and complementary businesses. Before we get into why you're all together, give us a little bit of an insight and just recap who you are and what you do. So we'll start with you, please, Travis.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. Great to be here. Really appreciate you bringing us together. Even though you know, facial hair wise, I'm still jealous of Mr. Blower here. But anyway, the Travis Schwab. I'm with Eventus Systems. We are a reg tech company that sits right in the middle of trade surveillance and market risk. So we help capital markets firms really across the globe, across asset classes, with any of their trade surveillance and market risk needs.
I'm doing very well by the sounds of it, as we've heard so far as well. Let's stay in America and speak to you, Mr. Hunt.
Thanks, Toby. And nice to be back and in such fine company. So Cloud9, I'm the CAO, and amongst other things, I help grow the brand and partner with other important fintechs that help provide better or greater solutions to my customers. We have been very busy in the sort of COVID world, rolling out our product and really starting to see some penetration into a lot of tier one banks and buy sides where, being smart around not just deployment, but also monitoring and compliance and data usage is really starting to take center stage. So this is an exciting panel to be in a discussion with.
It's been really exciting for you as a business. It's been, as pandemics go, it's really thrust the business to the forefront, and the value you've been adding has been great. It's been lovely to hear about that. Oliver, over to you.
Yeah, hey Toby, good to see you again, sir. Delighted to be here with two of my favorite guys in the industry. Oliver Blower, CEO of Oxmark. We are probably one of the recognized leaders of communication surveillance for capital markets. So we help global firms understand the value of their communications data, everything from a WhatsApp message to a turret phone call, to a sort of Bloomberg, Reuters message. We aggregate and analyze that communication with ultimately the view of helping these firms manage risk in real time. So, a lot of synergies with what the guys do, and obviously delighted to be part of that ecosystem and chatting to you again today.
Well, it's ecosystem that's absolutely the right word there, and this explains a little bit about why I thought it would be great to get you guys together. Because there's a lot of good fun in the panel, but it's also very complementary, and this whole COVID concept and theme of herd immunity at the moment, and transgresses from just humanity to actually the industry. And we're seeing much more and more collaboration, more and more partnerships, more and more ability to collaborate as an industry, and much more of a lean to that. Oliver, I know you sort of link into both of these companies well, and go back with both the guys as well. Give us your take on why this is happening at the moment, what the benefits are of partnering and collaborating, how you're working with other businesses right now.
Yeah, look, happy to, right? And, I think the central theme that you touched on there is that we're stronger together. This is an ecosystem, both within fintech as a sort of derivative of financial services, but more broadly within financial services. And I think, Toby, last time we were talking, we talked about the idea that these big banks, often have firm-to-firm relationships, and within the bank you have an ecosystem of specialties within fixed income and equities and other sort of products and services. And I see the vendor landscape and the fintech space in exactly the same way. We are not experts in every field. Travis and I collaborate, end to end on communications and trade surveillance. Brian and I collaborate around, pulling in trader voice and the turret and being smart about how we think about that. And it's solving problems for end users, and we're not blinded by the fact that we're alone in this market. There's lots of us on this end-to-end journey, and we love collaborating with innovative, like-minded firms, and love just having fun and being a part of what a great industry. So we definitely see this as better to be together than alone, for sure.
And there's more and more of an appetite of that as well, with the days of the legacy system and domination of markets seems to be giving way to a lot more innovation. There's an appetite for that on the end user space at the moment. Travis, we got together because of your connection to Oliver as well, and you were excited about that partnership. Tell us what made you think that. That's
kind of. I mean, a little bit. We're tepid about it. No, it is. You can't be great at everything. You and I talked about this, and Oliver and I have talked about this multiple times. You cannot. These are difficult problems to tackle, and it would be ridiculous and full of hubris if we said, yeah, we can solve every ounce of communication surveillance or trade surveillance or surveillance issues that you have. It's just, you have to be good to be successful. And so you have to partner up with people that are great in their respective fields. And so it's refreshing to find firms like Oliver's out there and Brian's, where we can work together. And you think about, really what's enabled these types of interactions is a lot of it has to do with APIs, right? Something very core to the adoption of and the widening and opening up of the ecosystem is that adoption of APIs. You don't have to be great at everything, but then you can leverage APIs to be able to communicate with each other. And so you should be able to get the best of each other's technologies using that type of tech. And that to me is just, you can do a lot of hand wavy crap around all these different technologies out there, but that core APIs tech enabling us to communicate is really one of the catalysts for us to be able to talk and leverage our different technology stacks.
Yeah, it's been a big development, isn't it? I mean, I'm just trying to think back, Brian, to when you kicked off and we were introduced by Mr. Maisie many moons ago, and when you were launching the business, involved in the launch of the business, did you foresee that? Was it always going to be a partnership based plan, or is
I mean, it's funny. I never was interested in building a better voice turret. I did see voice as one of the last bastions of what I would call a core element to how people get work done that really had not participated in the technology evolution that had taken place in other areas of fintech. And so it was interesting to me because, I think, Travis, APIs to me were always part of it. How it evolved and to the scope that it evolved actually has surpassed what I originally envisioned. But I'm a big believer in, expanding and connecting spaces rather than trying to control them, which was like the old Bloomberg model, the old closed network model, right? So, and I think, the customers, specifically now that the buy side has so much clout, demand it. They want to make up their own decisions and their own choice. They want to put their own pieces together to create their own path. They don't want it sold to them as a complete package. So if you have an elemental kind of core service that you can deliver better, the natural evolution of that is to inject it through APIs into as many useful workspaces, best of breed providers, like Travis and Oliver's companies. I don't want to dictate where BlackRock or where Barclays surveils, monitors, and analyzes their data. I want to be able to efficiently and effectively deliver it to wherever they direct me to do that. I'm happy it's often with these guys because they're great to work with and they've got great products. But I am relatively agnostic, and I've always felt that is a key element to growing fintech platforms.
So they're easier ones than if it's driven by the client. Is it often easier to guide that, or is it you just literally stand back and say to the end user it's your choice, or is it is the collaboration?
I mean, for me, I'm almost indifferent because it's the same trick. It's right. Once you have that API library established, it really doesn't matter. There are some people out there that I know in the industry that I want to connect to their platform, because I just know it's going to be a home run, and I want to be able to bring that to customers as a demonstrative tool or not. But, you know, I'm indifferent. I mean, if somebody were to come to me and say, hey, look, you know, there's this little compliance or data structure company over here, or we want you to integrate voice capabilities into our proprietary OMS system that we built, I'm fine. As long as you can connect to an API, we're good. So.
And Oliver, you've got your baby there, and your business's reputation is obviously dependent on how well you perform with your customers, and that means there's got to be some serious due diligence and thought about who you're partnering with. How do you go about that? What's important to you when you're looking at partners, when you're thinking about collaboration? And you know, do you walk away if there's a customer there that says this is who we want to work, we want you to integrate with and collaborate with? Is that an option, or what's important to you?
I think, you know, picking up on the theme from Travis and Brian, you know, a lot of, you know, financial services is moving to this sort of decentralized, you know, model. And we hear a lot of fancy words about sort of democratized and federated. But, you know, in my mind, these are sort of big words to talk about choice. And it's about giving customers choice. To Brian's point, you know, they want to interact with, you know, the clients that they choose over a medium that they choose on a platform that they choose. So we're never going to be in a position where, you know, we second guess or dictate, but, you know, we want to be open for business. We want to be flexible. You know, we want to recognize the fact that, you know, the world was already on a journey of change, and it just got accelerated by about 5 years with this pandemic, right? If we think about the way, you know, remote working was already gathering pace as big banks were losing talent to, you know, the sort of brand name shops like Yahoo, Facebook, Google, Amazon, etc., who operate in a very, very different world. You know, gone are the days where I have to get into the bank and sit there from 7 till 7 and interact over Bloomberg email or my turret, right? My clients want to behave in a different way, so I have to behave in a different way. And as vendors, you know, we're part of that sort of value chain, but we want to be, you know, we don't want to be an inhibitor. We want to be part of that. You know, I hesitate to use this word in the company that I'm in, but we want to be.
Don't do it.
We want to be the lubricant to allow our customers and their clients to interact, you know, across whatever channel they want, across whatever platform they want, especially in a world where you've got suppressed rates, you know, stress liquidity. You know, you want to do business, and we cannot get in the way of that. We have to enable that. So, you know, I won't use the L word again, I promise. I will say enablement. But, you know, to your point, Toby, so that's the sort of macro meta view. The micro view is, you know, we like firms that share our DNA. You know, what makes VoxSmart and Eventus and Cloud9 unique is that we don't just serve the market. We used to be in the market, right? Our DNA, we understand risk and trading and technology because we've been on the other side of the fence. And that makes such a huge difference.
Yeah. I think there's a sort of growing momentum around that. When I'm looking at the sort of, I hesitate to uncensoredly say winners through the, through COVID. It's the businesses there that are doing and gaining momentum, are those who have been able to position themselves in their customers' shoes. And you guys, having sort of walked that walk a little bit, have definitely got a trading advantage on that to answer, you know, what I keep banging on about, which is answering genuine problems rather than just sort of technical problems. Travis, I want to talk about this collaboration obviously being more and more important. We're living in a COVID world where there's the inability to do the these fabled nights out that I've heard of between some of you guys over yesteryear.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No comment. No comment.
It's ridiculous. Just
okay, maybe it's just rumors. I'm in the wrong chat rooms. But when we're talking about this, how do you still maintain that? How do you get that sort of feel for a business when you're not necessarily seeing them in the flesh? Build those relationships.
It's pretty interesting. Like we had our team meeting yesterday, and where there were 36 people on a Zoom call, and we're religious about that team meeting. And so, you know, that everyone needs to be on there globally. We set up a time to where it's not, at midnight in Tokyo or anything else. And we're on that call and we interact with each other. That's the minimum level. And then every time I talk to the team, it's like spend 15 minutes, reach out to someone that you haven't talked to over the last month and get on a video call with them and talk. Just, I don't care what you talk about. Don't talk about business. Talk about what your life is, but you have to make it a discipline. You have to be active about it. It's like any relationship. You need to be active in that relationship, whether it's virtual or not virtual. And so we've been using these tools. It's a very natural state for us. We've been distributed since we started 5-6 years ago. So it's that thankfully hasn't been disruptive to our culture, because that's just the culture that we've grown, kind of grown up in. Now we have expanded really rapidly over the last 6 months during this time period, which is, we've tried to then enable that culture through our normal kind of practice. And it takes a lot of discipline. It takes very clear expectations, right? We have lots of technology that we're trying to use to make sure it's just absolutely crystal clear what people should be working on. And it's rapid iteration. Just, you don't go into like this traditional kind of waterfall approach on software development where you're like, okay, set a goal in 3 months, we'll check in where you're at. It's absolutely Scrum-esque, agile, whatever crap, tech buzzwords you want to talk about. But it really is, you have to be super agile and super disciplined with communicating with your team all the time. It's just,
and that
it's
same when you're
all the
talking to identifying partners and clients as well. It's the clarity and the regularity of communication, I guess, is it?
It is, and I don't even like to have, even with, when I talk to Oliver, we're on video call. I don't want to be on it. I'm so used to now talking on video call. I don't want to be on a conference call where I can't see the whites of your eyes or, what you're talking about, because, that's how I get now my engagement, being able to talk to like Brian, seeing him and talking. And so that's just critical for us.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And in that sort of COVID world, we're seeing loads of different changes and challenges for customers as well. Part of that has been some sort of pretty topical stuff about compliance in this sort of new COVID. We're seeing some pretty hefty fines that have been thrown around recently. 920 million for JP Morgan, Aussie dollars of 1.3 billion for Westpac. There's real challenges that are coming out of this at the moment, and we've been talking a little bit about being companies being proactive rather than reactive, and the importance of getting ahead of the problems. What are you guys seeing in that space at the moment, and how are you, collectively helping and solving the problem and adding value there?
Yeah, I would say it first starts with that capture itself, and Brian and Cloud9 have really obviously led the pack in this space. Now, Brian, if you talk about the capture itself, and then Oliver and I can talk about then the application of that.
That's absolutely critical. And one of our strengths is the way in which we capture is embedded in the application, where most legacy recording systems, you're speaking on it like a telephone and a secondary, usually vendor and device, and it's usually on-prem, which how do you do that in a COVID world is your capture facility. So, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, but the reality is, Leo's our CTO is a very smart man and built that in. So now, no matter where you log in, no matter how you log in, we don't care. You go into the portal and you tell them, oh, it's being captured, and then I'm going to take that captured audio and send it to one of these guys over an API, and you're done just as if you were in your office, and it's absolutely seamless. And that's been a big win for us, right? So the deployability, the scalability, the architectural security, and then Travis is spot on, being able to capture that stuff and securely send it to one of these guys per my customer's request has been a real home run solution for the COVID trader.
Absolutely, and Oliver, you sort of hear that and work out how you fit into that jigsaw as well. Are you seeing similar sort of issues, and how do you guys fit into that solution?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you some data points, right? From February to March, our user base, which is, tens of thousands of end users in financial services, were sending and receiving in February, on average, 1 million instant messages, WhatsApp, WeChat, Telegram, a week. In a month, that went to 5 million in a week, right? And not only does that tell us that the way we communicate has changed, that tells us that overnight, these sorts of technologies became mission critical to firms. You know, if I'm Bank of America Merrill Lynch, you know, I've got 2,000 people in fixed income, you know, in 6 trading desks around the world pre-COVID. I've now got 2,000 trading desks around the world post-COVID. And each one of those has to, you know, be compliant, you know, ensure that it's sufficiently regulated. And these sorts of technologies, you know, and Toby, we talked about something that Mark Beeston said on his, you know, podcast with you, is that this just acts as an accelerant. I mean, this whole pandemic has just moved the entire industry forward 5 years, 5, 10, whatever the bid offer is. And you know, we see it on our platform in just the sheer volume of data. We talk about APIs. You know, we leverage an incredible API success story out of the Valley called Twilio. You know, we went from something like 80,000 recorded minutes in February to 10, 15 times that number in March, you know, close to sort of 1 million recorded minutes. I mean, the usage of this stuff it just blows my mind. And you know, that is indicative. And you know, what's been interesting, and we were chatting just as we before we came online here, is that kind of hasn't changed. People have been going back into the office, you know, ad hoc, a little bit staccato, but that usage hasn't changed, because the other thing that financial services tells us is that once these end users and these clients and these bilateral and multilateral relationships find something that they're comfortable with, whether it's a medium or an operating rhythm, they stick with it. You know, there is a reason why Bloomberg is so sticky, because everybody's on it. It's a closed community and it works. And, you know, Brian and I have had this network discussion for many years. And it's because people find a home, they're used to it, they like it, and they stick to it. And, you know, COVID has massively moved the needle on the way that people behave, they interact, they transact, they communicate. And I find that super, super interesting.
Yeah. Well, and just think, Oliver, if 5 years ago, if this happened, what the state of the world would be.
We would have been dead. The financial
a mess. And it's only because of that technology adoption that happened, you know, 5-ish, even a little bit earlier than that Wall Street post-financial crisis, let's say 10 years ago, it started some of the movement. And I'll use Oliver's, with the viscosity of the lubricant increased year over year. That's right.
5W40 now. So it's
that's right. So, and it's accelerating, right? Because it feeds itself, right? As the adoption, and it's exactly like Oliver was saying, as you get more people to use it and they're more comfortable, then that network effect takes place, and then you have more adoption on top of it. So
I'll tell you, you know, and that has been our experience. And you know, I saw COVID as a tipping point, as a catalyst to adoption. You know, this is not disaster recovery. This is understanding there needs to be a new way to work and having it put in your face. I forget who, I cannot recall who it was, but one of our customer who has been difficult to actually get to agree to deploy a startup-based cloud product into their trading floor.
You guys have a difficult customer? That's crazy.
Yeah, I know, right? But the comment he made was, he goes, first time in my life, the risk of not rolling you out outweighs the risk of rolling you out, so we will roll you out. And they did, and it worked, and they liked it, and they got comfortable with it, and they got all lubed up. And, you know,
oh, there he is. There he is.
I gotta get in on that. I needed to be in on that.
You got there.
And next thing you know, they like it. They don't know what the future is going to look like, and this de-risks the future. And it's working, and this community effect is taking hold, and it's all, you know, the stars are aligning, and I think that's the path forward. You know,
this risk reward thing is really interesting, isn't it? Because it's been, you know, when you look at the adoption of cloud full stop in financial services, it's always been based around risk, and now with this necessity, driving it, it's suddenly like, actually, it's, it opens up just such a panoramic view of opportunity, doesn't it? But behind it, I love, Travis, what you say about this sort of playing on the offense, it being so critical against this and getting people ahead of the curve. That's something which you're really thinking about, right?
Yeah, well, you can't. And to Brian's point is, we're going to stop fighting the fight and adopt it because now the risk is too great if we don't adopt it. Well, I would then expand that and say, if you're not adopting these types of techs that each box here represents and doing it proactively, not only are you harming just being able to run your organization in the world that we live in, but just on a more pragmatic basis, every single day, you mentioned some of the fines that have come up over that's just the last week. Every day there are headlines about the regulators hammering on the types of things that we cover. And this is not a commercial, but this is, if you're not, as a manager of your business or a firm owner, you have a fiduciary responsibility. You're putting your firm, yourself at risk because there's personal liability, and there are existential questions that you are going to have to answer if you're not utilizing these types of technologies. And so that to me is not, let's say 5-10 years ago, people were like, oh, we'll have it if we get, we'll put it in place if we get questions about it. Now is, if you don't take those steps now before you get the knock on the door, you're going to have real issues. And Oliver and Brian see it every day. I mean, we see it across our clients.
The genie's out the bottle, right? In terms of the new operating rhythm. I think one of the biggest challenges financial services has today is getting everybody back to work. Now that traders can trade at home, we can manage risk at home, we can be productive at home. If I'm one of these big firms, I'm really worried about these, 10, 100,000 square foot offices that I have and nobody filling them, right? So the genie is 100% out the bottle on a lot of this stuff. And the other point is, the regulators are totally caught up on the art of the possible now. 5 years ago, they didn't engage. They had their head in the sand because market participants were telling them that this stuff wasn't possible. Now they're engaging each and every one of us on what is possible, and they're educating market participants. I mean, unbelievable paradigm shift to the art of the possible.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a firm that I won't name, but what they're paid to do basically is go into banks ahead of audits and pre-audit the banks on how much of the material they're going to have to produce to the auditors that they actually have. And the sad reality is it's about half that is actually there and usable. The input data is just crap. They just don't have recordings. They don't have transcripts. They don't have messaging and email archived correctly. And the banks, on one hand, sort of budget for fines that they're going to manage and buy. I mean, they understand there's going to be a cost that nobody gets out of an audit scot-free. But the reality is the way in which they're going to be audited and the expectations and what's not going to be acceptable going forward as technology makes the ability to capture and manage this information better. It's going to raise the bar. And if you are behind on your tech, you're going to be held to the standards of people that are using the current modern technology, and you're going to pay a hefty price down the road. So
it's a sort of
no, and I think that's just to add to that point, Brian, or just a little more emphasis on that is, it used to be that the fines weren't in general weren't impactful to the business, right? We'll budget for it. They are now. They keep going up on size, and it's not a nice linear. It's a logarithmic increase in fines. And on top of that is, you didn't have personal liability, and that is a big. You can go to jail now if you don't do these things correctly. So it's not right. Just like, here's your slap on the wrist, don't do it again. Here is your fine that's going to put your business at risk, and you have potentially you're going to serve jail time, and you're going to be kicked out of this business. Yes,
that's right. Yeah, it's a whole different way of looking at it. That's right.
The other point, sorry, Toby, the other point I'd make, just sort of linking that together around like price, is the other thing that's going to happen in the next 5 years, if we sort of think forward, is a lot of the cost is going to come out the trade. And what I mean by that is you've got big firms spending tens of millions of dollars on legacy infrastructure that overnight has become redundant. A data point on that, before COVID, I was in South Africa and then Malaysia. And the heads of capital markets took me on a floor walk, and he said, you know, what do you notice that's weird about this trading floor? And I said, the first thing I said, well, it's quite small. And he said, no, get over that. I think I was a little bit offensive, but I then said, they're all using WhatsApp. And he said, your technology has enabled us to reach emerging market clients that aren't on Bloomberg. We can now reach 1 billion users, not 300,000 users. And the cost of doing that is fractional compared to historical infrastructure legacy spend. And all three of us, our technology platforms are cloud architected, deployed, delivered, hosted. The cost on deploying this is so insignificant or de minimis compared to what the bank is used to. And we're going to see, I think, post-COVID, a massive downward pressure on cost. And that is only going to help all fintech firms, because the reality is the barrier to entry here is not cost on any of this technology.
The only ones it's not going to help are the guys that have already captured these, network and communities, and they hold them, very closely and don't let anyone else in. That's going to go away. You're right. I mean, one of my customers, early adopters, said, the thing I like most about it isn't, is the fact that I can send out invites instead of running private lines to as many people as I want. I can reach out to everybody in the world. I can create 50 connections in 20 minutes for free. And that makes me do more business. That gives me more optionality for distant end counterparties. And that creates better pricing for me. So I'm doing more business with more people that I never would have met, never would have been connected to. And related to that, I'm doing much better on my pricing, on my transaction cost, right? So, and that's just a simple fact of reducing or eliminating the barrier to connectivity to other people in the marketplace through the kind of technologies that Oliver, Travis, and Cloud9 are offering.
So speaking of the barriers there, you guys are painting an absolute no-brainer scenario here, right? There's massive risks to the businesses. There's huge cost reductions. There's genuine benefit, yet still there remains barriers around adoption on this. Not everyone's and as you say, that there are people there who aren't catching up with this. What stops it? What is stopping the adoption of this sort of tech in businesses, and what's keeping people behind the curve and people ahead of it?
Applying legacy standards of security to modern technology to some extent is a problem.
Just broaden that out, Brian, is legacy standards across not just security, but how you apply people, how you're allocating resources internally, how you're deploying technology.
The whole
it really
model
is
of operating,
Yes. Yeah.
There's also a fear of the unknown too, by the way, is another one I would put out there. If I have a comfortable position and I've managed something successfully in a certain way for 7, 8 years, and somebody says, hey, come and learn something completely new, take on risks that you haven't considered before, and I'm not sure what impact it's going to have on you and you personally and your value proposition to the organization. There is a little bit, and that's not unique to me or fintech. That's just technology adoption across the board, right? It's scary, it's extra work, and what does it mean to me if I roll this out, right? So there is a bit of that. There's old standards, operating standards, to Travis's point, as well as just kind of the fear of the unknown, right?
There's regulatory friction there as well, right? Regulators, again, post financial crisis, post Dodd-Frank, the amount of processes that you have to go through just to become a vendor at a lot of these institutions is extraordinary. Like most small vendors can't withstand how long it takes to go through the onboarding process to get paid, right? You might have your software installed a year before you actually get paid on it. It's just the amount of friction that gets put into the process, not necessarily that they've done, part of it's legacy, but part of it's regulatorily mandated. Again, that kind of outmoded way of doing things causes a lot of smaller vendors not to be able to even think about doing business with these firms.
I agree. I mean, do you guys think that's going to change now because it sort of has to? I mean, do you think that the regulatory environment, I mean, I think it affects you. I mean, it affects me greatly in terms of my ability to deploy and how I have to capture data and stuff. But I always had thought coming into this business that the regulators were going to love me. Like, I'm a friend of the regulator. I was afraid customers might think I'm too regulatory friendly in terms of my ability to capture information to some extent. But I mean, do you think that there is going to be a paradigm kind of, mentality shift there as well?
I think, I mean, my view is it's often used as an excuse. I would add inertia to that friction. I would add protection of the status quo. And I'll give you a great example of that. We often get told that WhatsApp is banned by the regulators, right? We get told by heads of fixed income that nobody uses WhatsApp. And yet I've got the head of trading at the world's largest oil trading boutique telling me that 95% of all his trading is executed and confirmed on WhatsApp. So, who's telling the truth? There is an element in financial services of protecting the status quo, because as you go through these paradigm shifts, there's generational transformation that has to happen. And these guys clip the coupon, defend that status quo. They don't like to be challenged. In a world of suppressed rates and liquidity, they don't want to make a decision that's innovative or transformational because it exposes them to risk. So there's a human element to this, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I can well understand there's good reasons, but there's a portfolio of things working against thinly capitalized, to Travis's point, innovative fintechs that potentially underestimate some of these points. I mean, the three of us are, old enough and handsome enough to have been in this industry for long enough to know these things, right? But there are, younger people that come in, brighter-eyed and bushier-tailed that may underestimate some of these things. And it's only through living through these experiences on the other side of the fence that we understand how to sort of manage the process through, rather than sort of steaming in with a value prop that's slightly over-engineered whilst underestimating or misunderstanding the problem statement. So I think finding that, what VCs call product market fit, which the three of us have found perfectly, that goes a long, long way to really getting through that friction and through that inertia. And taking people on a journey with you, I think, is super important.
I was going to ask exactly that. It's that there's clear problems there and education that's needed. But the best way of doing that is effectively just taking people on that journey and educating them through that and showing why there's different sides to every part of those arguments and such like. It makes the sales quite an interesting part of it. So your sales teams are effectively going out there and educating as well as selling at the same time. Is that what you're seeing? Is that the answer to this?
Yeah, I mean, my view, and jump in, guys, is you can't preach to this industry. You can't, jump on your pedestal and tell everybody what to do and try and bring everybody to your party. You have to join the party, and you have to do that with an element of integrity and humility and openness, technically and commercially, that starts with an understanding of the problem and slowly introduces the solution to that problem. And that's the key to winning, I think.
Yeah, and it's funny, not only is that the way to do it now, but I don't know that you were able to do it with the way technology was years ago. You sort of had to guess, and hopefully you had enough DNA to guess well and build something and bring it out. The iterative process of software development and partnerships and connectivity that exists today, and you can spin something up on AWS and and build something and connect it to something else and change, you know, pivot the way that you're evolving your product in partnership with your customer, you know, that capability is both much more possible now and completely essential. And if you look at, like, it's so funny now, like when I started in the industry, I mean, there weren't even cell phones, but the reality
with
is,
their phones.
Exactly.
Before there were
TV.
telexes, we had Memexes and telexes and
the ticker tape.
We bought a ticker tape, but you know, a sales guy was like, you know, Johnny Martini going, you know, hey, here's my thing, you know, buy my thing. Now my sales guys are, you know, nerds. I mean, they go out and they sit down and they understand technology and they work across an organization and take notes and think about problems and come back and collaborate with product teams and host meetings and roundtables where they're bringing in compliance people and technology people and security people. And then we go back to those people and say, this is what we heard and this is what we're going to build for you.
Yeah.
And we can customize it and we can connect to this guy over here that you like with an API and send data to this and create a solution rather than push a product, to Oliver's point. And I think that is such a big theme in successful fintechs going forward, you know.
There is much
yeah, just to add a little bit to that is this, you know, financial services and healthcare, right? The two most regulated industries on the planet. We can't be like an Uber and you come in, you just start, you know, riding people around and hopefully you don't break all the, you know, livery, you know, laws and everything else. And then they just arbitrate their way out of it. If you do that here, you will quickly be just squashed because people can't work with you. If you try to break the regulatory structure, you will quickly get spit out of the back end because it doesn't work, because there's such risk of trying to go against that wind. And so you have to work alongside it and try incremental changes as compared to absolutely just trying to blow it up. And so I think that's, you know, we all talk about that, is you have to know what the hell you're talking about. You can't go in and just say, oh, we do it better and we do it faster and smarter. No, we actually work with the existing paradigm. We do it better, faster, smarter, but we also, it's acknowledging the existing regulatory infrastructure as part of that. And that's just crucial to these sales cycles and the customer journey that we take these.
That's right. If you're not knowledgeable and credible, or specifically around regulatory stuff, you're right. No, that's table stakes. Nobody will even talk to you. You're 100% right.
This is where we sort of move into a different area of sales, because there is, you know, we've been seeing it all the time. The salespeople we're placing at the moment are far more technical than they were, you know, even 2 years ago. So there's much more, you know, every time we're taking a brief, it's about having, you know, salespeople who potentially coded in the past or this, that, and the other. It comes more and more. It used to be strong pre-sales team and then your Johnny Martini, to your words, alongside that to do it. It used to be a lot more in the bar at Trade Tech, you know, after Trade Tech, where people were really coming to their own as
miss those days.
They passed it back over.
Don't tease us, Toby. Don't do it. Don't do it.
We still revisit those days. Nostalgic.
You can create other ones. But it is a shift, and is that something which is here to stay? Are we going to see salespeople becoming far more technical? And what do you lose from that? Because, you know, the two skill sets are often very different.
I don't think you can look. I think salespeople have to be, and I think good salespeople always should have. You have to be three things, right? And first of all, you got to be smart. Like, nobody has time to suffer fools anymore, right? You have to be relevant, because no matter how smart you are, there's 10 smart guys that want to talk to me. I only have time to talk to the guys that are talking about the things I care about. Mm-hmm. And then within that, there's probably 2 or 3 smart, relevant guys. I'm going to pick the guy I like the most. So there is still a relationship aspect. I still want to go out with somebody who's fun to go out with. I still want to have a guy that I can trust, you know, and I don't need to meet a new guy if I already have a good guy. And those core elements of human relationships, and that's, you know, Travis likes to look people in the whites of the eye when he talks to them. There is that, you know, this is not going to be, you know, Terminator. This is not going to be Rise of the Machines. You know, machines are tools and technologies. There is still a huge element of human interaction, trust, humor, empathy. And that's the last 10 yards to the touchdown on anything.
And the most important. And the most important.
And that's right. That's the red zone. You know, that's the last, you know, you got to be smart to get on the field. you got to be relevant for me to engage with you, but I'm going to do my business with the guy that I know and trust and enjoy. And I think that stays the core human element of sales.
I completely agree, and I'm now mentally evaluating our sales team based on whether they're smart, relevant, and I like them. And
I just get 2 people fired, or
yeah. I think the other really important thing to say is that, you know, all of us find salespeople really hard to find and hire, because you got to remember that no salesperson has ever sold my product before, because my product never existed before. And, you know, for Brian to hire somebody going in and selling a cloud-based, you know, turret system that is fully digital, like, that's never existed before. The market for that product has never existed before. So where do I find that guy? So he's absolutely right. They've got to be smart, relevant, and interesting. The same is true for us, and no doubt for Travis. When we're creating the market at the same time as we're creating the product, and that's how we create product market fit. But be under no illusion, finding salespeople is really freaking hard. And that's where, you know, the 3 of us have probably done, you know, a lot of the selling. I mean, Sequoia have a rule that you shouldn't hire a sales team until you're at 5 million of ARR, because, you know, the CEO, founder, you know, guy should do it, because this in early stage startup, the customer is buying you, the vision, the journey, the DNA. The product is important, but it's, you know, it's that final sort of 10 yards. You know, not being an American, I feel a bit disingenuous using an American football analogy, but
nice.
I would use a cricket analogy if I ever played cricket. But the point being is, it's actually really, really hard finding salespeople. And this is where, you know, I think Brian touched on it, that iterative journey point. Take your lead from the customers. You know, who do they like interacting with? Who do they like in the space? We take a lot of recommendations on people from our customers, because, you know, what's really interesting is that gap between us and our customers is closing. This world of interoperability and API, you know, banks don't manage money anymore, they manage data. What do? I manage data. Brian, Travis, right? We're all in the data business, which means we all have roughly the same expertise. And so, you know, we find a lot of customers coming to work with us, make recommendations. And you're right, 5 years ago, these roles would never have existed. And Johnny Martini in his pinstripe suit and his Hermes tie, those guys just don't exist anymore, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting,
sad,
isn't it?
There's it's a sad day.
It's sad.
The interesting thing you say there,
I miss those guys,
is
Right
how you
there.
move from being the CEO who's doing the sales to then trusting it. That's a fascinating thing, right? Because it's your baby, and you're then handing the reins over for someone to do that. How that first hire is often one of the most difficult ones to make. What is it that gives people the confidence on this call to say, right, that's someone who we're entrusting to be the face and the interaction, and pass that off? Because it's got to be that tear phase where you do that. It's important that you're there and you're with the clients and you're visible, obviously, and you'll remain a big part of it. But all of you are going through different stages of growth where it becomes more and more difficult to keep that, you know, the hands on it, on every single part of it. What's the key to that?
We're dealing with that every day. That is really probably my biggest job right now, is to figure out how to scale what we did with 10 people to 30 people to 60 people to 100 or 200 people. And that sales process is critical. And that's, you know, we brought in a head of sales probably a little earlier, and it was someone I was comfortable working with and worked with previously, because that trust is so important. I cannot be there for every single meeting. I cannot be there, but if I can trust you to do the right thing, be as diligent as you can, say the things that are important for this company to say, that goes a long way. And so for now, we're trying to scale that experience that we've had over the last 5 years from 1 to 2 people to 10 to 12 people right now. And then we'll go, you know, bigger than that. And it's really hard, to be honest with you. And for us, it's absolute focus on the minutia. We do a Zoom call, they give me a demo. Then we do a Zoom of the Zoom, and we stop it every 5 minutes and talk through it and talk about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and understanding, you know, before we could have a script, right? And you get your sales playbook and everything else, but we need, for me, I didn't quite appreciate the why we've become what we've become, why we do what we do. And that really can only come from like me or the first people talking about who were at this company, is the why. And so that's something that we're trying to do much better at, is explaining the why, and why this, why we did, and we made decisions consciously. This wasn't just this winding river, it was conscious decisions. And it's critical that our new team members understand the why. And so we spend all our time talking about it.
Yeah. I'm conscious of the time and I can't believe how quickly it's raced through, which is probably not a surprise with you three. But if we look at sort of the next sort of phase of it, you guys have all done incredibly well through what is one of the most difficult periods in economic history to do that, and your businesses are thriving and navigated a hugely challenging time. So massive kudos to all of you for it. But obviously we go into this with as we were saying before, with no real sign of closure, uncertainty again into 2021. 2020 is going to be a year of infamy, but it's also going to be a year which we can look back on with legacy and say that this is some of the things we did well. When we attack 2020 and we play 2021 and we play on the offense for that, what's going to be some of the things that you guys are going to be looking at in your individual businesses that you're going to take into it to say this is why we know we're going to be successful again, and some of the keys to your success that are going to be really ensure that the businesses carry on to going from strength to strength, as I have zero doubt they will. Brian, let's start with you.
Well, thank you for the vote of confidence. I mean, I don't know that I don't know that anybody in a fintech startup feels that they're going to be successful for sure. But I feel like we're well positioned. I'll give you that. Yeah. And so I would say a couple of things that are making me optimistic about my growth prospects for next year. All right. So the first one is, and Oliver hinted about this earlier, community begets community. So it's a snowball effect. And with this catalyst that I've had over the last 6 months, and the fact that most people, now that they've tasted the soup, are going to move on to the next course with me, means that my community is larger, and that will help grow. Secondly, and this is a little bit of serendipity, as this was happening, kind of the stars aligned. All of the core product stuff that I had to do, security, scaling, feature functionality, deployment and install base, is a little bit behind me. So that allows me to shift gears into expanding my API capabilities, developing new data capture capabilities, creating new meaningful partnerships, figuring out how to integrate with and voice enable and distribute through other platforms, and working with guys like Toby like Travis and Oliver to come up with the new standards and the new solutions on how things are going to be delivered. And if I can sort of own that voice vertical within this kind of new paradigm of how, that's a great place for me to be, right? Because so I am very optimistic around not fighting the fight to be the best turret or even voice communication device out there, but changing the narrative into being the voice player in the new collaborative, data-centric, compliant, cloud-delivered space, right? And so I think that's going to help me grow.
Love that. Oliver, let's go over to you.
Yeah, I think, look, from herd immunity to herd mentality, we all benefit from our customers, silently endorsing us. The first thing any one of our customers is going to do when they speak to us is go speak to their buddies in the industry and say, have you heard of these guys and do you use these guys, right? So, doing a good job of building that network and building that community, super important for us. And these sorts of collaborations and industry networks are so important to really fuel that. I think for us, talking earlier about this genie coming out the bottle of remote working and decentralized finance, and I do believe that's the next big sort of wave of fintech. that's really, that's really helped all of us, really, because it's proven that this new operating model of being at home, being productive, managing risk whilst not being in the office is not only possible, but it's potentially transformational. And we like to think at VoxSmart that we've enabled a small piece of that. We've been an accelerant and an enablement for that. I'm not going to use the L word. We just want to continue doing that. And our direction of travel is definitely around the data. We would love to get to the point at which, we can show a desk head, a risk manager, where their risk is in real time across communications, across data. Gone are the days of these disparate, siloed, defended fiefdoms of data. Bringing this right back to the beginning around API and community is democratizing that data, and we're all a part of that. And I cannot wait for the day in which we have that single pane of glass where I can see that single source of truth, and we're all contributing in our own special way to that sort of holy grail. And that continues to keep me motivated and passionate about being in this space and collaborating with these guys.
Love it. And
yeah, and I just add one final thing is that the addressable market continues to grow, right? So you think about the asset classes and just look at digital assets and the like, but you have big macro wins happening where maybe things started most prescriptive market US equities and expanded, and there's been rules and regulations and other asset classes, but fixed income, FX, digital assets, all of these monstrously large asset classes still are lower on the adoption curve than some of the other places that we've been to for a long time. So I think that's just the other bright point, that the market, the pie is growing. It grows almost every day. And with the focus that the regulators have unabated on the types of behaviors that we all help suss out, also just builds the addressable market. So along with everyone else, I think there's just a great macro environment that's happening and growth.
Well, it sounds like a massively positive way to end this. You can go to the BBC, Fox News, CNN, and get all the negatives, but with you three, we're only going to get utter positives. I'm very optimistic.
Joy, just sheer joy.
Lemonade out of lemons.
Chaps, it's wonderful speaking to you. Thanks so much for sharing the time. It's been a pleasure, an education, a privilege, all of those above and more. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for giving us.
Awesome. Thanks, Toby. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Thanks,
you.
guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
Another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.